Okay, welcome everybody to another edition of the CWA Community Calls. Today we have Chris Stevenson with us to talk about leading through adversity, issues that leaders are facing during this time. So on the agenda for the day today, I'll run through a quick Zoom tutorial. Chris is going to present about a 30-minute session, and then we'll have about 30 minutes at the end for discussion and Q&A. So while Chris is talking, get your questions ready. You can go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A box. So on the center bottom of your screen here, you should have a few buttons, including Q&A. It'll definitely help me out a lot if you guys can go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A. We also have the chat box, which you can use to add comments, chat amongst yourselves. If you'd like everybody to be able to see what you're chatting about, go ahead and toggle the to bar to all panelists and attendees. Make sure to do that if you want everybody else to be able to see what you're saying. And during the discussion portion, we will be able to open things up for folks to participate. So if you'd like to make a comment during that time, join in the discussion, go ahead and hit the raise hand button, which is in the center of the screen. That will open up a dialog box for you to unmute yourself, which you have to hit in order to start speaking. And control your audio settings. So Chris Stevenson, some of you may recognize him from the CWA Summit. He has been a presenter at the conference for a few years, as well as joining us on the road last year for the CWA meetings that we took across the country and into Canada. He's got a ton of experience in the fitness industry. He's a great speaker on topics like leadership, customer experience, and company culture. So he's a wealth of knowledge, and really looking forward to hearing from him today on leadership. So without further ado, I will go ahead and hand it over to Chris.
All right, thank you so much, Laura. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. So bear with me 1 minute. I made sure to clean up my desktop this morning and put everything in this to-do file so it wasn't embarrassing when people saw my screen. Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. I have a lot of content as I was putting this together. So I'm going to move fairly quickly, but there'll be time for Q&A, and you'll have my contact info as well. So I'm happy to help anyone that I can. But obviously, it's a great time to talk about leading through adversity. So what we want to cover during this webinar is I'll give you a really quick background. You just heard about me, so I'm not going to spend much time on that. But just so you understand where some of the thought process is coming from, we'll talk about some leadership traits, sort of that pandemic mindset that your teams are dealing with, 4 keys to lead through adversity, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So really quickly, I'm on the board of directors for IHRSA. For those that don't know, IHRSA basically is to the fitness industry what the CWA is to the indoor climbing industry. So it's a nonprofit organization that's there to promote, protect, and grow the fitness industry. So a lot of the stuff that I'll share today, because I've been heavily involved sort of on the lobbying side and on the advocacy side, and then just in discussions about what are we putting in for protocols for reopening clubs and all of those different things. So a lot of the knowledge will come from the health and fitness side, but it's very similar to the indoor climbing side. And another piece that many of you might not know is for 5 years, I was on the faculty at the California Health and Longevity Institute. So we did a lot of executive wellness where we did things like stress management and communication skills, leadership work. So I got to work with some of the best PhDs, and you know how they say never be the smartest person in the room. That for sure I accomplished when I worked with this team. But every time I did my presentations there, I sat in on everybody else's lectures and got to interact and work with some of the greatest minds, sort of again, in communication, stress management, and leadership. It was just a wealth of knowledge. So that's sort of where it's coming from. And then with over 20 years in health and fitness club operations, and now I think it's going to my 4th year of being able to work with the Climbing Wall Association, which I love. And on a side note, I climbed for the first time. After working for a couple of years, I kind of felt like a loser since I had never climbed. And so I started climbing this year, and I love it. It's incredible. It's awesome. And I'm looking forward to the day when we're kind of back to normal in the climbing industry so I can start climbing again. But fantastic industry, and pleasure to be a part of it, and grateful to Garnet and Laura for having me here and involved. So obviously we're in a crazy time right now. You hear words like unprecedented, and it's true. I love when you're going through Facebook and LinkedIn and people are like, the guaranteed way to come out of this on top, or how to get all your clients back. And I love how they're guaranteeing stuff that we just don't know. But that's why doing things like the webinars that CWA is providing, and educational topics like this, and talking with each other, and studying what other people are doing are helpful. But it is a crazy time. And it's a crazy time where leadership is more important than it's ever been, right? When things are going well, leadership's not quite as challenging. But when things get rough, that's really when you find out what type of leader you are. And your staff will always remember how you made them feel during this time. So there's many, many traits when it comes to leadership, but there are a couple that I really want to just focus on briefly. And as we talk through more of the tactical stuff, keep these in the back of your head. And I think one of the things that great leaders have to really focus on right now is modeling, truly leading by example. Your staff, it's funny when I present live and I talk about leading by example, I'll do this little bit where I take my thumb and finger and push it together, and I tell people, okay, look through this circle. Actually, you can see me, so you can do this. But you hold your hand up and you put your thumb and your finger together, and you stare through this circle, and you're going to bring it closer, closer. I want you to stare and move your arm really slowly, closer, closer. And I want you to put it right here on your chin. And most of you probably put it on your cheek. Reason being is you did what you saw me do, not what I said to do. So it's not just about telling people things right now. It's about truly leading by example, and your staff is going to follow that. So they're going to see what you do. They're going to see how you communicate. They're going to see how you post on social media. And that's the kind of behavior that they're going to follow. So make sure that you're consistently modeling. Obviously, it's a time to be inspiring. And when I say inspiring, it's consistently with all of your communications and everything you do, staying true to your company's mission, vision, values. And that's really important right now, because as facilities are closed and as people aren't as physically engaged as they normally are, it's easy to lose that sort of inspiration. So again, not just leading by example, but making sure that you're consistently out there inspiring people. Honesty is important as well. And again, these aren't earth-shattering topics or traits, but right now we're in a confusing world. There's a lot of misinformation, and being honest is key. So honesty also means sometimes saying, I have no idea. I have a friend that has a club in Wisconsin, and they kept reaching out to their ownership base and asking questions, and they were just not getting the answers. So people weren't being responsive. And then it feels like they're hiding something. So in a time where people are already kind of panicked and uncertain of so many aspects, honesty is even more important than it's ever been. Confidence as well. People need to see that you're confident. And by the way, that doesn't mean not being honest, but with confidence, you're just demonstrating, say, hey, we're in a tough time. You know, you're being honest with people. We don't know exactly what the future holds, but we're going to work as hard as we can. We're going to work on things. We're going to be better at what we do. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that when this is all said and done, we have done everything that was possible and everything that needed to happen. So right now, where people don't have a lot of confidence, it's important that you exhibit that. And then the last piece is empathy. And I think this is key with your teams. You have to put yourself in their shoes. As an example, when I do sales training, I always talk about a prospect coming into a health club. You got to put yourself in their shoes, because as fitness professionals, we're excited, right? We love exercise. It's cool. It's awesome. It's fun. Prospects know they need to be healthy, generally are out of shape. Maybe they're pre-diabetic, or their back hurts, and they just come from this different place. So as a salesperson, don't think of selling to somebody like yourself who's excited about exercise. Think about selling to somebody who is not so excited about exercise, right? So it's the same thing with your staff, right? So you've seen these, but this is what your staff is feeling. They're stressed, anxiety, worry, fear, sadness, grief. Those are the things they're going through. So as leaders, we're on this level where, we are concerned about our business, and, what are the new protocols? What strategic moves do we have to make? How do we handle our staff and all these things? They're feeling that, but then they're also feeling all the stuff in their personal life as well. So all of your interactions and the way you lead right now, think about them in this manner, not your typical person. And sometimes as leaders, it's hard, because we're just naturally driven, nose to the grindstone, tough it through hard times. So we just expect that everybody will be like that. But when you're empathetic with your staff and realizing these are probably the things that they're going through, then you're going to approach things a little bit differently. So kind of put yourself in their shoes as we approach leadership. So that's sort of just an overview. I wanted you to really think about this last slide. Think about this person, right? The person that's feeling these things as we go through these tactics, because that's going to be helpful. So the keys that we're going to talk about are practicing self-care, developing actual strategies, and there's a lot here, so it'll be a little high level, but hopefully it'll get the wheels turning. And again, I'm happy to answer more questions, at the end of this or offline about some of the strategies that we'll talk about. How do we communicate as well as possible during this time? And then seeking support. And one of the best things that, sometimes we get in these situations and we feel like it's ourselves against the world, right? And we have to do this ourselves and we can't burden other people. When the truth is, when you're in situations like this, the best thing in the world you can do is seek support, right? So I'll give you some avenues to do that. So self-care. Sometimes it seems a little cheesy. Sometimes it seems a little woo-woo. But the bottom line is, I heard this great quote one time. I wish I could remember who said it, but they said, in order to be selfless, you got to be a little selfish. So to be a great leader, to serve our teams, to serve people right now, we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to take care of ourselves. Because if we're not operating at the highest level possible right now, there's no way we can bring out the best in others and take care of them and support them the way they need to be supported. So with self-care, defined as giving adequate physical and adequate attention to your physical and psychological wellness. And then I like this other thing, which I had never heard of, but it's ethical imperative. And what that basically means is you have your own purpose, mission, and values. So this is a good time when we're in this sort of crazy downtime to think, what do I really stand for? Because that's going to give you the self-awareness to be a better leader and take care of other people's as well. So it's not just your company's purpose, mission, vision, values, it's your own. What are the things that matter the most to me? What are the things that I will not bend or break on, right? You want to take time creating that ethical imperative and then just doing stuff to take care of yourself. So really quickly, just things that you need to be doing is, one, stick to a consistent schedule. And I know in the first week of this whole shutdown, when things kind of came to a halt, I know you could see yourself, right? I saw myself sleeping just a little bit later and having one or two more cocktails than you normally would, or those sort of things. So what you first want to do is just stick to a consistent schedule. Get up at your normal time, create that calendar where here's where I'm doing, self-improvement exercises or reading. Here's where I'm doing stuff. If I am still working, here's what I'm going to work on. Here's what I'm doing here. So create a very consistent schedule and do your best to stick to it. Now, as part of that schedule, obviously exercise regularly. Health and fitness, just like climbing, it is about physicality and taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're doing this on a regular basis. So there's so many avenues out there right now. Virtually, people are doing free content everywhere. So it's so easy to hop on Zoom classes or streaming classes as it comes to exercise, or simply download apps. But make sure that you're exercising regularly, eating as healthy as possible. Another very slippery slope when you're at home next to the pantry all the time. It's can be challenging, but stick to it. Download MyFitnessPal, log your food so you know exactly what you're doing. But healthy eating is important. Sleep sufficiently. This is really important, and I want you to think about this. How many of you have ever said or had somebody say to you, "I can get by on 6 hours"? Well, would you like a team full of people who get by, or do you want a team full of people who perform at the highest level possible? So as part of that consistent schedule, have a consistent sleep schedule as well. Don't stay up later and sleep in later because you can. Stick to that schedule so that you get sufficient sleep. Spending time outdoors. It's so easy to get caught up and be stuck on the laptop all day long or in your home office or whatever it is, being at home. As part of your consistent schedule, say, hey, right after lunch and then early afternoon, I'm going to go for a walk just around the block, take the dogs out, those sort of things. But make sure that you get outside. There's actually been some research that shows that being outside, sunlight and everything actually, helps with immunity and helps with your mood and might even help with the coronavirus. So getting outside, taking time to meditate and deep breathe. Again, that was something that we focused heavily on at the California Health and Longevity Institute. And I'm not a super sort of, woo-woo meditation type guy, but the science behind deep breathing and calming anxiety and relieving stress is there. So taking time to just take, 5 minutes, ground your feet, close your eyes and do some deep breathing is very powerful as well. And then managing your emotional diet. And I love the term emotional diet. Again, I wish I remember who I heard use it the first time, but so SiriusXM, right, has an all coronavirus channel, right? You can go on DirecTV and find all these stations where it's coronavirus 24/7. You can read about it everywhere, right? Manage it. What I do is I have the Apple News app on my iPhone, and what I'll do in the morning is I'll read 1 or 2 articles that are coronavirus related, whether it's economy, businesses opening, the health aspects, and that's it for the day. Because we can start to poison ourselves by taking in this overwhelming amounts of information that can be contradictory. So manage what you're taking in, right? Set some parameters, set some rules. My director of operations for our consulting group actually just told me one day, she's like, I just limited my social media. I set a timer and I don't go on because it can be overwhelming and negative. And there's a fun aspect, but doing things like that, really be aware, because that stuff can just bring you down. So you need the knowledge. And by the way, get it from trusted sources like the CDC and the WHO, right? Those are organizations that give you great information. So what you want to do is make sure that you're managing that. Don't overwhelm yourself. You don't need 24 hours of coronavirus coverage. And by the way, I did that for like the first 2 days. I sat in my car just listening to that station and realized at one point that, first of all, it was stupid. But second of all, it's just overwhelming. All it does is bring you down. And then connecting with others, right? That's really important this time. We can't really do it physically, but making sure that your Zoom calls and Zoom happy hours and those type of things, reaching out to people, make a call list and call a different person each day and have a conversation. And if they don't answer your call, then they don't like you, because everybody has the time right now to answer calls, right? So, but literally make a list, connect with people. That connection with others is just an intrinsic human need. So make sure you're doing for that. So those are just some tips on taking care of yourself, and they all kind of pile into that consistent schedule. But the other thing you want to do is, as a leader, is facilitate this for other people, right? So how can you help facilitate these sort of things for your teams, right? Your people that aren't working right now, that are at home. So doing things like providing them resources, just say, hey, I found this great streaming, free workout that people are offering Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at 8:30 in the morning. So giving them the opportunity, suggesting reading materials, books, and sharing things like that. So as a leader, again, you want to take care of yourself, because then you can be the best leader you can be, and you'll be the best for everyone else that needs you, but also share these things with your team. So that's sort of the leading by example, the modeling, as well as you providing the resources for people. So that's just self-care. And I think that's a great starting point, right? So, we can be the best version of us we can be, but it really does mean something. So the second piece, now we want to talk a little bit about strategy. Again, there's a lot of material here, so I'm happy to discuss afterwards with strategy, but I thought it was important, as leaders, it's our job to create strategies, and creating strategies in such an unknown time is challenging. So I wanted to put some stuff here that you really can think about. Obviously, the first is financial planning. And what's interesting with financial planning is obviously cash flow is hugely important, right? But what you need to do is you need to have different scenarios, right? Okay, here's the scenario we open May 1st. Here's the scenario where we open June 1st, July 1st. And you got to have multiple scenarios. Then you also want to plan on, are we going to open at 100% capacity, 75%, 50%, 25%? So you want to run these multiple scenarios so that you're prepared depending on how this goes. In unfortunate news, China's a little bit ahead of us on the timeline for the coronavirus, and they've reopened gyms, and now they just shut them all down again. So you also have to plan on the fact that we could in fact have a second spike in this where things are closed again. I'm not trying to scare anybody, by the way. This is not like the doom and gloom. This is supposed to be like an upbeat leadership thing. But being prepared helps you deal with that. Just as an example, there was a webinar in fitness yesterday, and ABC Financial is a big software billing company. And what their research showed, and again, this is just predictive research, so this is not based on anything that's happened because this is a new period of time, and I'm just looking over at the data so I don't mess it up. But they said in a best case scenario, revenue will be 20% down when clubs open. The conservative would be 30%, and in worst case, it'll be 40%. So that was just a study they did. It's again, just based on what they've seen throughout the years and from some of the clubs they've worked with. A friend of mine who has clubs in Sweden, and Sweden never had to close. So these are clubs that weren't mandated closure. They voluntarily did social distancing practices at the club. But again, I'm looking at the data. So she said that Q1 of this year compared to Q1 of last year, and last year was operating as normal. And remember, they never had to close. Sales are down 30%. Their club visits are down 22%. Cancellations went up 35%. And their membership freezes increased by 72%. So those are statistics on a club that didn't have to close, just people and their behaviors, where they could go if they chose to go, plan it. So again, those are just some baseline numbers. ABCs were estimates. The other ones are actual numbers from a club. So thinking about things sort of from that lens. It's not a light switch. Although I do believe climbers will come back quicker than health clubs for many reasons, but plan for that. And we want to be optimistic and everything, but you don't want to get caught where, shoot, I thought 100% of people were going to come in. The other thing I would recommend is, this is the time to go line item by line item on your expenses and, really monitor everything. When you generate more revenue, there's a cost associated with the revenue, but when you can cut an expense, that dollar's a dollar, right? A dollar of revenue is not necessarily a dollar revenue because of the cost related. So going through your line items and figuring out what can we cut, looking at things, what can we shop right now, where maybe we can get a better deal with some of our vendors and those sort of things. So you're really looking just at every aspect of that so that you can be as prepared as possible. Connecting with your local banks and making sure that because there are other grants and SBA loans and things out there besides what you're hearing sort of in the big relief packages. So taking time to look at those things. And then, just again, being prepared to understand that every dollar matters right now. It's a great time to work on, not in your business. And I know that term can be pretty cliched at times, but it's true, right? You physically can't be there. So those of you, who are still working, now it's time to do everything that you've often said, I don't have time for that, right? So that could be reviewing, doing a website audit, right? Going through your website, making sure that everything is the way it should be. It could mean coming up with new customer experience protocols, or looking at your sales systems and your follow-up systems and making sure that everything's in place. But think of this as the time to work on everything that you normally just don't have the time because you're in the trenches. So take advantage of this downtime to do things like that. Coming up with a member communication strategy. It is amazing that there are clubs that just aren't talking to their members right now. And you need to communicate on a regular basis with your members. So, I'm going to talk about a staff communication strategy in a moment, but you want to make sure that your members are you're letting them know, here's where we're at. Here's what we're doing as a climbing facility. Here's, while we're closed, all the stuff that we're working on. When we reopen, here's some of the new things we're going to be adding. Here's some stuff we'll expect from you, the members, as far as cleanliness goes to help support the club. So you're working on those strategies. Facility improvement, obviously, when you're closed, look at things in your facility that you've always wanted to paint that one area or move this equipment or remodeling. I know we're all very budget conscious. So with facility improvement, I'm not sitting here saying, hey, go add a bunch of new stuff and spend a ton of money. That's not what we want to do. But, if you can redecorate a little bit, put up some new signs, move some equipment around, or do those sorts of things, it just, when people come back, it'll make it feel new. It'll make it feel fresh. So figuring out really inexpensive ways to do things that make a difference are going to be really powerful right now. Trim the fat. This is an interesting one, but this is also the time to, those couple programs that you launched and you have a couple people that like them, but they're just not really the program you expected it to be. Now is the time to make those changes. If there are things you wanted to move around or eliminate, get rid of them. And I hate to say this, but it's true. I'm sure some of you, if you really look at it, have those staff members that you wish you didn't have. I mean, a lot of us, we have a lot of great team members, but they're the people that are just there and they're not good. These are the people that you don't bring back, right? It's time to look at those things. What have I been looking to change, or who have I been looking to possibly get rid of? And now is the time to do that. And then finally, reopen planning. And again, it's kind of like the financial planning, the member communication. Some of these could be entire webinars. So I apologize for saying so high level, but I want to just to get you thinking about this stuff. But again, it's not a light switch. We're not going to say, hey, climbing facilities are open, let's go. You're going to have all kinds of different things. They may open with conditions on social distancing, new cleaning protocols, new things that you have to do. So with your reopen plan, there's just a lot to consider, right? So, excuse me. The first thing you want to think of with reopening is, what are your new procedures going to be, right? And one thing I do recommend is that you have what you expect from your members and what you do as a facility, and always communicate that, because people may trust you as a facility that you're going to take care of everything and do things properly to make sure they're safe, but they may think, but those other climbers are not, right? So you'll have this list to say what we do as a facility, what we expect from you, the members, whether that's extra hand washing, wiping things down, and all of those sort of things. Then you're going to have to communicate that you're going to almost have to do member onboarding. If you're going to expect new behaviors that revolve around social distancing and cleanliness, you're going to have to figure out systems to onboard those new members so that they understand what's expected. And then with that, you're going to have to do some training with your staff when you bring them back on how you approach a member who's not following the new protocols that you put in there. So you can see where there's a lot of things that you have to consider. with fitness centers right now, they're ordering thermometers, they're ordering masks, they're ordering gloves. We've seen overseas where the timeline's a little ahead, where they're taking people's temperatures as they come in, right? And if whether you're staff or a member, and they're sending you away if you've got a fever or if you show any symptoms, you've got to coach your staff that if they see somebody that looks like they have symptoms, how do they approach them in a polite way? If you're going to take people's temperatures, where are you going to do it so it's not embarrassing? So when Garnet comes in and I take his temperature and I'm like, get out of here, you got a fever, he's not appalled by that, right? So there's just so many of those little things that you have to consider. I definitely recommend, you're going to think of sales and marketing, right? And cleanliness is going to be one of the biggest differentiators in the industry when you can prove it, right? And by the way, some of cleanliness will just be perception. What are you doing to make it, I had somebody talk about, hey, do we close, the gym to do extra cleaning or not? And I said, you could close, or if you do, market the heck out of it and say, we close for an hour to do a deep cleaning every day, or let people see that you're on the floor cleaning more. Make sure to say clean team, throw it on your staff instead of standing behind the desk, have them go wipe stuff, that sort of thing. So there's just so many things to consider. The other thing is, and this kind of falls in there, but this might be a time to partner with vendors and say, hey, can we put kits together that we can then sell to members? So then they have more of their own stuff instead of coming in and using our stuff and renting our stuff. And not only is that potentially a new revenue stream, people feel better about it because they're taking care of their own stuff, as well as taking, we can't, no matter how much we clean, we can't guarantee it, right? So it does take a little bit of liability off of us. So there's just a bunch of things that you want to really think of as you're doing this. And then I would recommend some sort of grand opening, but you wouldn't do that day one that your club's allowed to operate because you'll be figuring a lot of stuff out. So, about 90 days down the road, a nice big grand opening to make everybody feel good about everything. So that's the strategy piece. Then communication, right? Good communication is a bridge between confusion and clarity. I don't know that there's ever been a time where this statement didn't ring more true, right? Because we're in a world full of confusion and a lack of clarity. When is it going to open? When is this going to end? When is there a vaccine? So communication is critical with your teams right now. So as far as communicating well with your staff and strategy go, the first question you want to say is, why are you communicating? What is the reason? Well, you're communicating because you want to keep your staff engaged. It's very easy to become disengaged when they're not hearing from you and they're not actually in the facility. So you've got a team member that you want to make sure that you're reaching out on a regular basis and just, again, keeping that high level of engagement. I speak a lot on employee engagement, and you've got 3 levels: engaged, disengaged, and actively disengaged. And it's so easy for people to fall into the other 2 categories. And then when they come back, or they get so disengaged, they go get another job. So you've got these great team members that you're just not touching base with that end up going to get another job. Then who is communicating? So obviously all the facilities are in a different spot, but as far as who is still working and who's been furloughed or who's been laid off, you got to figure out who's communicating. So let's say, for example, you're CFO and you want to be honest about where the company is financially, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Maybe that's best coming from your CFO, and there's a weekly CFO message where we just applied for this loan, we just got this loan, we didn't get this, but we're applying for this. So figure out who in your organization should be communicating, obviously that's still working, and whom they should be communicating with. Now, how are you communicating? We're talking about how you're communicating. What we're really talking about is are the things that have to go in every communication that you do. So the first thing is, no matter what the methodology is, you're always aligning with your culture, right? So I actually talked to a club that's in Texas, and I was talking to someone who worked for them, and all their core values are about staff and members and taking care of them and safety and all this. That was all their core values. Yet they were still being made to come in, even when Texas had said it wasn't mandated yet, but it was, we prefer you stay at home for safety. And they were struggling with that because they're like, wow, that really doesn't align with the culture. So the decisions you make when it comes to strategy and communication and everything need to align with your values. Okay. Because first of all, it shows that your values are truly important to you as a company. But it also reminds everybody what you stand for and what you do, and gives more meaning. Stay transparent. So transparency is important as well. Again, if you're not transparent and there are gaps, the human brain naturally fills gaps, and they don't tend to fill them with awesome, happy stories. They have negative, worst case scenarios, right? So if you leave gaps in your communication and you're not totally transparent, people will fill those gaps themselves, and generally they don't fill it with truth or in a positive way. I mentioned earlier my friend that had a club in Wisconsin. He had reached out to the owners and he said, "Hey, should we file for unemployment? Are you applying for the PPL loan?" And he was getting no answers whatsoever. They just weren't being transparent about anything that was going on, and he got frustrated to the point where he contemplated not working for that organization anymore. So being as transparent as possible, it helps squash those rumors. It keeps people from creating their own narratives, and those narratives spread. So if you're not transparent and somebody's questioning things, then they're telling other team members, and it's a bad downward spiral. So be as transparent as you can, and be human. So this is not just about business. We looked at all those things earlier: anxiety and grief that people are feeling. Make sure you humanize things by doing things like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Do you have any questions? So it's not just about business protocols and all those things. It's about being human and really creating a sincere relationship. So make sure that you're human in your conversation as well. Be succinct. So I do believe that you should communicate frequently, often, and diversely. But you do want to be succinct. People are getting hammered with messages from everybody and everything. So make sure that your messages are clear and succinct and to the point. Respond swiftly. Again, sort of like my buddy that couldn't get answers from his ownership group. You got to respond swiftly, because right now people are scared. And when there's a delay in response, if somebody reaches out with questions or is asking for information and you're not getting back to them right away, they get even more scared. Right? So you want to make sure that you're responding swiftly. And again, that could be with, "I don't know," or "we haven't heard yet," or "we don't have that information." But I guarantee you that when a team member reaches out with a question, if you just put them off because you don't know, that is worse. It disengages them. It makes them paranoid. It pushes them into creating their own narrative and making their own assumptions, as opposed to being like, "Hey, appreciate you reaching out. I'll let you know as soon as I hear. Feel free to always reach out to me as well. We just don't know yet." Or you give them, obviously the answers when you have them. So responding swiftly is important as well. And then over communicate, but with a purpose, right? You should be reaching out frequently. You should always be in the front of their minds, but have a purpose. Don't just reach out to reach out. Make sure that there's important information. And there's so many things you can communicate, which we'll talk about in a second. So that's how to communicate. And then where are you communicating? And when I say where are you communicating, what are you using to do it? So obviously your emails, right? Video messages. Video message, I've seen a lot of clubs that just do a video message once a week because it personalizes the experience as opposed to simply just reading something. Making phone calls, you have the time, reaching out to your team members. Virtual meetings, so we're actually bringing people together, and then connecting through social media. So these are all the things. And the one thing to note too is when you diversify the way you communicate, everybody receives and likes to get information in different ways. You guys hear about people that are, learn best by hearing or by seeing or by actually doing. It's the same thing with information. Some people really take in information well by reading it. Some people would rather watch a video so they can see and hear it. Some people would rather do things over the phone. They would rather do virtual meetings or do things on social media. So basically what you want to do is make sure that you're using all those different mediums to convey the messages that you want, right? So the more you diversify that, the better. What content is being communicated? So really briefly, you want to inform. That has to be a part of your content. And that's when I say inform, what I mean is that's your business information. Here's where we're at. Here's what we've heard. Here's how we're following the situation. So that's sort of your real tactical business related things. And then the second piece is education. So where information is just, here's where things are. Education is, giving them opportunities to learn, sending them information, those type of things where we're teaching them stuff. So while inform is more strictly business related, we want to educate them as well. And then we want to entertain them. And this may sound silly, but again, I had said earlier, it's important to be human with people right now. And they're looking to entertain and interact with people. And what that might look like is, and I'm sure many of you have participated in a virtual happy hour. I'll tell you, I was skeptical at first. I'm like, really? A virtual? I actually had someone who worked for me years ago that said that once. I'm like, that is ridiculous. And this was prior to COVID. She's like, oh yeah, my friends I went to college with, we'll do this like Skype drinking. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I actually texted her after my first virtual happy hour in this situation. And I said, you are way ahead of your time. This is brilliant. But it's a blast. So we did this virtual happy hour, and it was really fun. And we downloaded an app, I think it was called Evil Apples. And it was just like this fun game where you see people doing trivia events, but just really entertaining, having fun, really staying connected and engaged. And it was really, really, really fun. This was an interesting one. We work with a group called Energy Fitness Clubs in the UK, and they posted this social media group called Take the Stage. And now normally it's a lot of best practice stuff, and it's a lot of more work related stuff, but they're all shut down. So they do things like this. They said, let's have an online talent show. And it was hilarious. We all participated and it was fun. Tomorrow's the last day to post your talent. So, as serious as the situation is, and we're all worried about our clubs and our facilities, you have to add this fun, interactive, engaging human component to it. And that's what great leadership does. You bring people together in that way. And then when are you communicating? And again, this is something that you'll come up with as a strategy, but I said frequently, but the biggest thing is in a time where things are so unpredictable and unknown, anytime you can give predictability to your team, they're going to feel at ease. They're going to feel safe. You're going to build trust. So tell them, say, hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit you with an all staff email every Monday. You're going to get a video message from our director of operations about this every Wednesday. Every other Thursday, we're going to do a virtual happy hour from 6 to 8. Right? So give them that predictability. So you'll decide your own cadence. And by the way, if anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to talk through it with you and offer suggestions on what I've seen other clubs do and what I've done in the past. But you want to give them that predictability. So, and think of that with everything. In a world that's so unknown, if you can provide some stability, you're going to do a lot for people's well-being. So you'll decide your own cadence, but make sure that you communicate what the cadence is and stick to it. Another thing right now, I guess it's kind of, whatever you say you're going to do, do it. Because the worst thing you can do is say, hey, I'm going to touch base with you all the time. You're going to get a phone call every other week, and then you don't. That's the worst thing you can do as a leader right now, is say you're going to do something and not do it. And then finally, this last piece, I love this quote. Networking has been cited as the #1 unwritten rule of success in business. And networking is a part of this, but seek support. I kind of opened up this whole thing with, this is a time to reach out to other people and seek support, right? It's not a time, it's such a leadership misconception that leaders do it alone and leaders are out there by themselves and I'll do this and I'll push through. No, great leaders know to seek support. So with this, it's for you to seek support as leaders and also to offer these things to your staff to reach out and seek support as well. So just a couple quick examples, and I think we're doing really good on time. We can move to the Q&A. Obviously the CWA, I work with a lot of organizations, advisory boards, and all kinds of things like that. And I will tell you that you are in very good hands. And I say that very honestly. I would never say anything bad about them, but I just wouldn't say it if it weren't true, right? And it's absolutely true. We've had some great conversations, and the stuff they do for you guys and for your industry, you guys are awesome. I feel lucky to work with you guys as well. But I loved this. I just thought this was really awesome. You can count on us because you can, here to support you. So reach out. They're offering these educational sessions, the webinars. Just reach out. I mentioned earlier, I'm the board of directors with URSA, and I always mention that as well. I'm like, part of your membership is the ability to reach out when you have questions and you need information. That's what we do as an organization. So, reaching out to, CWA is important. Networking with peers, also really important right now. I was on another webinar, and a guy who owns a large chains of club in the US said, I never thought I'd see the day where I'd be on a call with our 4 fiercest competitors all working together to figure this thing out. So I know to some extent we are competitors if we're in the same marketplace and those sort of things, but right now it doesn't matter. Right now it's about the industry and it's about sharing and caring with each other. So, networking with each other, reaching out, scheduling calls, and making sure that we're all sharing best practices, especially because we just don't know. So, you hear something, or I hear something that's happened in a country that's ahead of the curve, so to speak. And I'm like, hey, I just heard they're doing this. It seems like it's working. What have you heard? So it is a time that we all come together because it's important that we make sure the industry survives, right? And then we can get back to competing with each other, right? Doing things like webinars, and just to, obviously you're on this one, so you know about that. But the CWA is doing 2 a week, which is incredible. And it's all great information. URSA also, even though it's health and fitness, there's a lot of carryover. They offered up all their webinars for free. So this is a great time to take advantage of those resources. Some of them are COVID related and others are just marketing and sales. So when you create that consistent schedule for your self-care, put in times, hey, I'm going to listen to one webinar a day or every other day and learn and then work on your business, not in your business. Facebook groups, I mentioned that Take the Stage group is a great one, but create a Facebook group. There's one I put here, active management. I know I've mentioned this before at the summit and some of the events. Again, some of the principles, sales are sales, whether you're health and fitness or you're climbing. There's sales, there's retention, there's customer service. This has been a great group. I highly recommend it to you guys. You can just join it. But people are on there asking questions saying, hey, they just allowed our state to open temporarily. What are you guys doing? And I've never seen such an altruistic share of information from like-minded professionals, but finding Facebook groups like this one, which has been just massively beneficial. URSA also created a forum where you can go in and ask whatever questions you have, and then experts answer it. So another great thing that URSA is doing for free, just another great set of resources. And then finally, obviously consultants. And the reason I put this up is because what I wanted to make sure that you guys were all aware of, and I mentioned this to Garnet and Laura prior, and I'm doing the same thing for URSA, is I'm happy for no charge to help anybody who wants to hop on a call and needs help with ideas, no strings attached. I've been fortunate to have a lot of success in my industry and even in the climbing industry as well. And if there's any, and right now I just speak and consult and help other clubs. So I'm not burdened with trying to, I'm not burdened with my own club that I'm dealing with. So if there is any way that we at Stevenson Consulting can help you, you'll have my contact info, reach out with an email or a call, and I'm happy to hop on the phone. And whether it's messaging or if you have questions about what I've seen other places doing or that sort of thing, I'm sincerely happy to help. I love this industry. It's been really cool to be a part of it for almost 4 years now. And any way I can help and give back the way the CWA is doing, I'm happy to do so as well. So, those are things, again, it was high level, it was fast, but I wanted to leave enough time to ask questions. And again, you can reach out offline as well, but take care of yourself, because if you don't, you can't take care of anybody else, right? You can't lead effectively. Work on all of those strategies. I gave you a list that you should start brainstorming. Create that communication schedule, stick to it, and educate, inform, and entertain, and then reach out for support. This is no time to try to do it yourself. We're all in this together. I think that's a pretty popular hashtag, stronger together. And it's never been more true. And the bottom line is, this is really the true test of leadership. It's what you do now, and your staff will never forget how you treated them and made them feel, and how you worked to serve them during this crisis. So this will be, for many of us, the time we were really defined as a professional, as a leader. So hopefully that helped. Here's my contact info. Again, I'm happy to reach out. And Laura, we can throw it back to you for Q&A.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for going through all of those concepts and ideas for us.
Of course.
I thought that was really helpful for me, even just thinking through, how I'm managing my time and, this new reality.
Yeah.
So thinking about self-care strategies and how you can share them with your staff, I had a question for you about, incorporating those into your staff communication and engagement. Have you seen any ways that folks have done that in successful ways?
Oh, well, the great news is there are so many, like I said, free resources right now. All the clubs that have shut down, many of them are just doing free online workouts and classes and those sort of things. So you just literally Google it and pull up different clubs in your area that are doing free resources and then start sharing them. You can do, I think, when you see it, like a lot of people are using Facebook Live as sort of a medium for that. You can create watch parties. So just tell your staff, hey, when I see these good things, I'm going to create a watch party. So then they'll be alerted that it's on. I know that my director of ops belongs to a club who is now they're setting up on Zoom and then doing a Facebook Live workout. So we're all looking at each other through Zoom as we're watching the Facebook Live workout. So we're getting that same workout. And even as far as scheduling it, and obviously it's optional, right? Say, hey, it's important we take care of ourselves. Let's exercise together. I found this class. I'll set up a Zoom meeting and then we'll watch it on Facebook Live and kind of do it together.
Awesome. Yeah. Anyone out there who's listening, if you have any ideas or experience with engaging your staff and providing them self-care opportunities, we'd love to hear about them. And also, you can go ahead and throw any questions that you have into the Q&A box, and we will go through them. So the first one we have here from Doug Cosby was, once you are allowed to open, what will your metrics be to actually open?
When you say metrics, I'm not sure what we're looking for.
Yeah, Doug, if you are there and able to maybe jump on the conversation, and that'd be awesome.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Doug.
Yeah, by metrics, I mean, so in Georgia, a couple gyms are reportedly going to open tomorrow, but some more are not. So as we think about this, think about the responsibility that we have to our customers and to our staff, we're still working with fairly limited information, trying to decide, okay, if they tell us we can open tomorrow, would we? So by metrics, I mean, where's the comfort point?
I think that's a great question. And I don't know that there's a definitive answer, but I will tell you, and I'll only say this because we're on a climbing webinar. I wouldn't say this on a fitness webinar, but we were kind of chatting before this. You got to decide as a brand, and you're going to, continue the research, use the CDC, use the WHO, but you're going to have to decide, like you said, when you feel there's enough data out there that it is safe. Because right now, our country's pretty split up, where some states are opening, some states are staying shut. And I've talked to owners who are in states that are going to allow openings right now that are like, we're not opening till at least mid-May until we have more information. It's just really, sorry, my screen just got funky.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
Oh, it's okay. I could stop sharing my screen as well. Yeah, I don't know how to get out of there. Okay. But you can still hear me though, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So it's very dicey, and you risk, I think some of the clubs that will open right away when they're allowed to, you're going to risk a backlash of people saying, how dare you be open? The same way when we closed down, some of the states or some of the clubs that really pushed staying open, they were getting backlash on social media. So I think you look at your mission, vision, values, and follow the research. And I wish I had a better answer as far as very specific metrics. But I would just follow the CDC recommendations and WHO and communicate that to your members and say, as much as we'd love to be open, and I know the state is allowing conditional openings, we as a company don't feel yet like it's in the best interest of your health and safety to be open. I think people will respect that, but we just got to stay up on the media. And if I hear anything like that, any more information, I'm happy to share it with you guys. So yeah, I wish I had better standard or better metrics. I just don't think they're out there yet.
Yeah, it's tough, and we're all trying to figure it out kind of as we go. And even the government is trying to figure out what their stance and guidelines are as they go. So and
do keep in mind your brand, and I would say, there's like good prophets and bad prophets, and I've talked about this before sometimes when I present, but sometimes you can, we want to make money and it's more a short-term decision. Think long-term, just think, yeah, I could open and maybe generate a little revenue right now, but I think it's going to damage the brand in the long run. So just really, it's really, it's a brand decision. But I personally would err on the side of being cautious, and I would follow more a majority rules rather than, the 4 states that allow everything to open tomorrow. Now, all of a sudden we see 20 states and we feel more comfortable and there's more data. And yeah, I think we just got to be patient and keep watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You were talking about facility improvement earlier, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on kind of how to take cleanliness into account for that. And the psychological aspect of when we do reopen, how our facilities should look, and how that might play into people's kind of psychology of feeling comfortable in the facility.
So one thing that's going to be really important is whatever you do as far as signage goes, if there are markers on the floor, those sort of things, you got to do them professionally and brand them. So let's just say, for example, you're going to put X's on the floor and you're going to go every other route, or you're going to start to distance people. If you just throw duct tape on the floor, that doesn't look clean or healthy or anything like that. So all signage, communications, decals, anything that you're putting up, make it look really professional. There's a little convenience store by my house, and they took wire and they put up like a plastic thing in between the cashier and where the customer stands. And I almost feel like it's worse. Like, it doesn't make me feel safer. It feels ghetto and unhealthy. And so first of all that stuff has to be and I'm not saying you have to spend a ton of money, just make sure the layout's good. It's branded, because then it shows you care about the cleanliness. So your brand's on everything. Some of the stuff, again, a lot of it, and I've talked to a lot of club owners and operators, a lot of it's going to be perception, right? So, I mean, you actually want to be clean and you want to have those standards, but some of it is just going to be perception. So making sure that your staff knows that they're going out there and you're wiping stuff down and they see it. I mean, they see your people out there doing that sort of stuff. More sanitation stations need to be visible. Like I said, so signage, if you're going to do social distancing, spacing stuff out. And then again, really communicating in a branded signage thing where everyone can see it, what you expect from your members. And again, and that's going to be a huge one, because they'll expect you to take the cleanliness and the health measures to do it right. But they're still going to be worried about other customers, right? So when you're at least telling other customers, hey, we need you to do this. We need you to, you're going to wash your hands on the way in. You're going to wash your hands between, whatever that looks like, in the climbing space, everything's got to be very, very visible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing that I read recently was anything you can do to remove clutter, kind of just making things look clean and uncluttered. That's also going to help with
I will tell you
perception.
a great club to look at. When I was in Ohio, it was Vertical Adventures in Columbus. I walked in there and I was like, oh my gosh, this is literally, and it was the absence of clutter. Everything was straight. Everything was organized. Even if you can hide hide equipment that you use behind some sort of wall, so you still have to grab it, but it's behind. If you remove, clutter, and a lot of it's subconscious. I mean, I look for that stuff. So when I visited Vertical Adventures, I was like, wow, you guys had this dialed in. But a lot of consumers come in and they won't walk out going, I feel much healthier and safe, because they weren't very cluttered. But they subconsciously, they're like, this feels right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, clutter, organization, social distancing, professional signage, the more sanitation stations, wipes, those sort of things that are visible so that people can see in an organized way.
Yeah. We've got another question here. How do you manage expectations with hiring back employees with a staged approach to reopening?
You just got to be as transparent as possible. And, again, it's like optimistic transparency. So I say, hey, if I could do this the way I'd want to do it, I would flip the light switch. Every single member will come back and every staff member would come back immediately. But obviously we've got to keep your safety and the member safety, and we've got to stay compliant to everything that needs to happen. So you communicate frequently and transparently. And then when you get to that phase where you're like, hey, we're going to be able to reopen at X capacity. Therefore, we are going to make some decisions on who we're able to bring back. We want to bring back everybody as soon as possible, but we've got to do this in a way that allows us to continue to operate, that makes, so financially we can continue to operate and we can continue to be successful so that we can get back to where we once were. So we will notify you when we'll be able to bring you back and at what point and what your responsibilities will be. So it's just consistent and transparent. And this will be the hard part and I've heard so many gyms and clubs that just aren't communicating with their staff and their staff is clueless. If you're communicating on a regular basis with the information and the education, all that stuff, it makes this a lot easier because they're used to hearing from you, right? If you haven't been communicating, start right now. But the hard thing is if you've been shut down for 2 months and then I reach back out of nowhere, I'm like, hey, we're gonna be able to reopen a little bit. So we're probably gonna bring you back. And then not other people, then other people haven't heard anything. And then it creates sort of dissension in the ranks and divides people. So transparent, frequent, and just open and honest about what the overall plan is and then what their role in that will be.
Yeah, awesome. All right. I think we've gotten through all the questions, unless anybody wants to jump in right now with any final questions.
And like I said, if something pops up afterwards, or you have a chance to, if you listen again or anything like that, because I covered a lot of stuff very quickly that you could go much deeper into, you're more than happy for anybody to shoot me an email, and we'll hop on a call or email or whatever if it was one of the specific points that you'd like to dive deeper into, I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris, for that.
Anytime.
Yeah, so that was a really awesome, informative webinar and presentation. Next week, we have a couple of topics coming up. We're going to be doing a brainstorm session, again, like we did on Tuesday this week, discussing reopening plans, operational policies, communication strategies for reopening. So that'll be a really fun, engaging discussion on that as well. Next Thursday, I'm planning a session that will dial into the strategic financial planning topic that Chris actually touched on a little bit today. Things like creating scenarios and models, what to expect with reopening revenues and expenses. And I am looking for panelists. So if anybody is interested in participating in that discussion as a panelist, maybe sharing some of the things you've been working on in that area, please reach out to me, and I'd love to hear from you. My email address is laura@climbingwallindustry.org, right there. So if you're interested, please go ahead and reach out. In the meantime, stay engaged with us. We have our coronavirus resource hub that we're updating constantly at climbingwallindustry.org/coronavirus, and we're here for you. So please reach out if you have any questions or any issues that you'd like to get in touch about. So with that, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, Chris, and we'll see you next time.